Welcome to Lawyer Speaks, presented by Law Community. I am Tisha Singh, and today we welcome Amita Chohan. She is a barrister in Locke Lord LLP. She has also worked in Five Stone Buildings and Baker and Partners. She has done her qualifying law degree and in law and business from University of Warwick Business School. Today, we will discuss her professional legal career and her journey in London. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good, ma'am. Ma'am, first of all, ma'am, what was your inspiration behind choosing law as a career option?
So this is actually a very difficult question. I've thought about it in advance, and I think a lot of lawyers get asked it. I don't have a family member who comes from law. My mum has a master's in economics. My dad did engineering university, so nothing family related. It's more, when I was at school, the activities that you naturally find yourself doing. So I found myself doing debating, found myself doing, a lot of, joining the writing groups at school, just anything that I was naturally drawn towards as an activity kind of sparked that interest in, careers that use those specific skills. And then there's like some sort of compulsory work experience that we have to do when we're about 15 or 16 years old. And the first types of work experiences I did at that age were going to a very local, small, tiny law firm that deals with divorce law and, just your day-to-day family law issues, and going to a court for the first time. And I think I was just instantly drawn. I definitely knew I wanted a career in law. I just never knew whether it was going to be... I was definitely drawn towards a barrister career, but at that age, you don't really know. You can't say what you want to do until you have the real exposure to it. I'd say it's just a mixture of lots of things, but if I was to pick one thing, it's probably those first few work experiences that I attended.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, you mentioned you're a first-generation lawyer. So you must have faced a lot of difficulties setting in this field. What is your experience like?
I'd say that I've not actually, it is difficult, on paper when you think, okay, first generation lawyer. But I think there's a lot to be said about, not everybody goes through those difficulties. I think for me, it was always, I didn't really distract myself from, is it going to be difficult to get into this career? I just kind of focused on, this is what I want to do. And these are the steps I've got to take to get there. And okay, it took me longer than other people to get to the career that I wanted to have. But, I think through work and perseverance, there never really was a time where I thought, this is getting difficult, must be because I'm a first generation lawyer. Not at all. I think people have this, this is speaking from my experience, but I think people do have this misconception, especially in the UK, that, the barrister career is very, very traditional, steeped in tradition. It's difficult to get into. And yes, it is. But you don't really, I think it applies to every jurisdiction across the world, which is if you want to get that career, which is difficult to get to, you will. I would love to give you something spicy and, interesting and, this is the difficulty I faced and this is how I overcame it. But I don't have a story like that. It just really is hard work. And sometimes I sit there and think, gosh, I think when you guys contacted me, I definitely felt like this actually makes me think about some of the things that I've achieved, because you just get on with it. And I think that's a skill that I learned, and something that I learned from people that I did work experience with, my parents, my teachers at school, my university tutors, other people in the profession who are a lot more senior to me, taking their advice, which is just keep persevering and you get there in the end.
So ma'am, why business school? So where does business amalgamate with law?
So when I was at school, as I said, I definitely knew that I wanted to have a career in law. but I was obsessed with other subjects like maths and, you know, things that weren't so ready, righty. And I really was not comfortable with going into a straight law degree where it's just going to be non-stop reading, writing, you know, studying books and what you think a traditional legal degree is going to be, an LLB. And for me, I thought, well, I'm not going to do law and maths. I don't even know if that exists. But I thought, well, business is definitely going to have, you know, accounting, it's going to have financial management, it's going to teach me, it's going to give me something that's going to make me more well-rounded when I finish my degree. That's not to say that doing a straight law degree is not, you know, a great way forward. It definitely is. It's just my choice was, I wanted to do something where this is the last chance I'm going to have to study. Why not study something that you love, that has, you know, different subjects that you love, put them all together, and if you can do it in a combined degree. So I did law and business studies, and it really was, so you did law modules with the law school. I did this at Warwick University. I did the business modules that the management students do and international management students do at Warwick Business School. So you were a Warwick Business School student. And then on top of that, did mixed modules. So, you know, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but international law in the business environment. So that's, you know, mixing law and business together. And now, looking back, I think it really helped me. I do feel like it's made me a well-rounded individual. I do think that when I'm dealing with clients or when I'm looking at a particular case, I can step back and think, okay, who are the stakeholders? Let me look at things from the client's perspective. Let me look at things from a strategy perspective to understand why the client has these needs, so that then we can go about and drill down into the law. And, you know, it's not, you have to be creative to some extent as a lawyer. And if you can understand your client's industry to an extent, or at least understand how to go about understanding your client's industry through that, you know, experience of studying business, I find that helpful. So it's not a random selection. And I mean, if I was to give a piece of advice based on, if I was to give a piece of advice based on the degree that I did, I would say that it's very important to study what you're passionate about. And if you are interested in a career in law, or even if you are curious about it, don't think that I didn't study law as my first degree, so now that career is closed. It's a closed door, because it's not. I mean, I've got a brother who did a non-law degree, and now he's just converted into law, and he's just finished his solicitor exams. And that, for me, is a big thing, because I think, God, clients in the construction industry are going to love you because you have this experience outside of law. So that's my little splurge on that.
So, ma'am, focusing on dual areas must have been hectic. So how did you manage the extracurricular activities that happens in law school, and how was it experience like?
So extracurricular activities, first, I would start off by saying I particularly did two different types of activities. So I did law-related extracurricular activities. So I did mooting, I did debating when I was at bar school, and when I did, and outside of the law extracurricular activities, I played cricket, or I was into boxing. So I love sports, so I kept my sports up as well. And I think what's really important when you're studying any degree is that ultimately you've got to remember that in the real world, when you have a job, you're not going to be working 24/7. So it's great practice, it's great coaching for the future life to do your studies and try to find time for the things that you love to do. If you don't, it can be quite difficult to get out of that zone. It becomes your habit. It becomes your habit of, you know, burying your head in books and feeling guilty about taking time out for yourself. I mean, I never used to feel guilty about doing something else that's not studying. The reason why is because one thing that I've always been very very focused on, and I've always prioritized, is organization. I think if you wake up in the morning and you say, if you're really committed to your sports, if you're really committed to your studies, if you want to work hard, play hard, you say, I'm going to allocate this many hours to my studying, and I'm going to split it up like this, A, B, C. I'm going to allocate this many hours to my prep for my mooting competition, and I'm going to allocate this many hours or this particular day to my non-law, non-studying, non-law extracurricular activity hobby. And it really is you have to manage your own expectations. There are going to be times, for example, exam season. I hold my hands up during exam season. I used to do nothing but study. And that was what worked for me. So the 5 weeks coming up to exams, or 6 weeks, I was burying my head in books. And that's just how I had to do it. And it works differently for other people. But yeah, you get there in the end. It's just very hard to balance. But once you start to, put that into practice, now when I'm practicing law, I think it really paid off trying to find that balance when I was younger, because now I'm not working till 1 a.m. in the morning. And there's a lot of people, especially students who want to have a career in law, think, oh, if I become a lawyer, I'm going to be working non-stop. Really isn't the case. It is the case if you don't know how to manage your time.
And that's a wonderful insight. But ma'am, I'm curious. Are you always able to fulfill your checklist? Are you able to complete them?
Yes.
You have great organization skills.
I definitely, I think I'm not just saying yes to show off, but I really do. It's one of the things that I'm really set on. So in my day-to-day life now, when I'm working, if I've got, say, X number of tasks to do, if there's something that it really is a long-term project, so say we're drafting witness statements, I know that I don't have to do that all in one day. So you've got to think smart when you're working. Therefore, I'm not going to try to, be a hero and fit everything in one day. You don't get any points for being a hero in the real world. You actually get very tired. And so, if it's something like drafting witness statements, I know I'm going to give myself 3 weeks, depending on what, the deadlines are. I'm going to work around that and reach it, my own internal deadline with the partner I work with. When it comes to day-to-day work, drafting correspondence, everything that you're doing as a lawyer, I definitely get all of my tasks done every day. That is the most important thing for me. And when I tell people that, they think, oh, you must be working till really late. And I don't. I'm not up till midnight at all. And I don't actually think the partner I work with would admire me for that, because we have a very good working style, which is work hard, play hard. And, now that we've got a lockdown, that definitely has changed how much you have to organize yourself, because you can just wake up in the morning, have a shower and get straight into your laptop. You don't have to commute. So it takes away that big gap in the morning that you have. So you have extra time to do your own things, have longer for breakfast. But one thing I always do, which I did pre-lockdown and I will do post-lockdown when the world becomes normal again, is I used to wake up at 5:30 a.m, do my boxing, so I love boxing, then get ready, have breakfast, do some meditation. It's like my daily routine. I have to do those things, have a shower, go on the bus, get to work, and then I'm focused. And, there are times when I might miss my lunch or something, but try not to, but I do sometimes. And I guess everybody does that, whether you're a student or a lawyer or a banker or a teacher. And
ma'am, talking about the lockdown, how has it affected your business related work and activities?
Not really for me, and I don't think I can speak to it much, because I am a junior associate. So the work that I do is definitely based on the partners I work with. And I think everyone can say that they've been quiet at times in all types of industries, but we definitely have a lot going on. I'm finding myself having a day full of work every day. I think it depends as well what stage you're at. So we work in the litigation team at my firm, which means that if you've got cases coming up, if you've got trials coming up, you're always going to have work. You've got trial work going on. You've got advisory work going on, and it doesn't really stop because you've got court deadlines to meet. You've got clients' expectations to meet. But I can't speak to that as much as a partner could speak to that. I think if I was a 30-year associate or a 10-year associate, I probably could say a lot more. But I mean, I've only been at my firm for 1 year, just about to complete 1 year. So my workload is based on the partners I work with and their workload.
Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, students would love to know that how did you actually strategize your internships and then subsequently your entire professional career to align with what you were aiming for in your life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I was at university, I would have loved to be one of the few students who obtained their pupillage. Pupillage is the training you have to do to become a barrister in England. I would have loved to have obtained that alongside some of the star, candidates who got their pupillage at university. And it all started from the first round that I applied for pupillage. So you can only apply for a certain number of places. And it is very competitive, that is a fact. And I did that in my third year of university. I went to university for 4 years, did a 4-year degree. And I told myself after I wasn't successful in that round, and I said, right, instead of becoming one of many people who you keep trying and it kind of takes away part of you because you feel disheartened every year, rather than falling into that mindset that every time I hit send on an application there's 90% chance I might not get it because it is competitive, why not take a step back and say, what do I need to do, what work do I need to do on myself to actually be sure that this is a career I want? And secondly, to be so confident that when you do make an application you think, right, if I don't get it, then I really need to work on myself because I've put 110% into that application and I've shown them that I have all of the skills and I am the most suitable candidate. But to be the most suitable candidate, you've got to work on yourself. And I strongly believed that you cannot finish a law degree. In England, the system is different. You cannot finish a law degree and be ready to practice. I am a firm believer that you should get work experience in the industry. So I knew that I wanted to be a barrister, but I thought, I want to be a barrister, but I also want to understand what a solicitor does. What is the business model of a solicitor, of a law firm, and what is the business model of a barrister? I was very fortunate enough to find myself doing a job as a paralegal as soon as I finished bar school at a litigation boutique. So litigation boutiques are very unique. So in India, you have lawyers that do advocacy and they also do the day-to-day kind of solicitor work, the work that solicitors do in the UK. So the profession is mixed in India. In England, it's different. So you've got the barrister and solicitor. The first job I did was a litigation boutique where you had solicitors and barristers under one roof. So you had 2 QCs, a barrister that owned the firm, and lots of solicitors. So it was a great first real insight for me of the work that barristers do, the work that solicitors do, and the difference in the skill sets and the overlap, and how they complement each other. They really aren't that separate because they have to be teams. They have to work in teams because they're serving the same client, the same lay client. So having done that work as a paralegal, I wanted to go into a bit more of a challenging role. So you know that I worked at Cobra & Kim, which is an international law firm. I worked in their London office. Again, their London office was comprised of solicitors and barristers. So that was a perfect opportunity for me to get stuck into doing work that barristers do as a, you know, I was not qualified with a practicing certificate, but I was doing work under their supervision. Getting feedback every day from the person that you want to be is the best way to grow. And it's actually whilst I was at Cobra and Kim that one of the pupillage rounds that I applied for, I got my pupillage. And the place that I actually trained at to become a barrister was also a litigation boutique with solicitors and barristers. So that's been a very common feature of my journey. And I think what's unique about it, and what I would say to students, law students, non-law students, is that don't think that there is only one conventional route to getting to where you want to be. If you want to become a lawyer, you can do in-house law work experience. If you love fashion, well, why not try to see if Burberry has an in-house legal department that you can, I'm sure they do, but where you can go and do some work experience. If you're interested in politics, why not work with a law firm that deals with constitutional law? You don't have to give up your passion and completely focus on, you know, I have to go to a particular type of law firm, you have to go to a law firm, have to do work experience as an advocate. You don't. Clients want well-rounded individuals, employers want interesting individuals. So why not make yourself interesting by thinking outside the box and having a unique journey and not feeling afraid of it? It can be very scary. I mean, when I did law and business at university, I was definitely afraid that what if I really should have done law? What if this is going to work against me? When I was at law firm as a paralegal, I thought, what if this is going to work against me, that I'm not working in chambers with barristers? But it didn't. So I don't know, maybe the proof is in the pudding, but you have to be brave and try and have a strategy in place so that you know that at the end of it, if nothing comes from it, at least you can look back and say, I have no regrets. That was important to me. I tried everything I could to get to the career I wanted to, and fortunately I did. But if I hadn't, I would still look back and say I have no regrets, because I did everything I could have to position myself to at least have a good shot at it.
Ma'am, have no regrets. That's wonderful. Ma'am, what advice would you give to yourself if you would have passed law at this point in time?
I'd say don't be afraid to ask questions. Because no question really is a silly question when you're first starting out in your career. And I have been brave enough to ask those silly questions. I think it's just in my nature to be I'm very bubbly, and if there's something on my mind, I just like to say it. So I've always had the same approach with, my professional life, which is, if I've got a question, well, if I don't ask it, I'm sure there's someone else who's thinking about it and they're too afraid to ask it. And I mean, looking back, I would say that if I was qualified today, or even if I was looking back at my, 23-year-old self, which is kind of the same question, I would say, keep asking those silly questions. When I say silly questions, I mean, there's a boundary. I mean, there's some silly questions where you really should know the answer. But having said that, when you do ask the questions that are very basic, but you really want to know the answer, and I'm saying by this, I mean silly questions like being brave enough to ask questions about the career. Try to do the research yourself to answer the question yourself before you go and ask the question. Be as informed as you can. There's a lot to say about that, both in when you're first starting out in your career and also in your day-to-day job. If I was doing a particular piece of work and I wanted to ask someone senior in my firm a question, because I'm not that I'm struggling, but it's an area that's slightly out of my comfort zone, I'm not going to rush to the person first and ask that question. even though I could. I'm going to work at it myself. I'm going to spend some time to really try and inform myself and educate myself. And my last resort, I mean, sometimes you have to go to them first, but my last resort is then I'm going to go and ask this person a question so I can ask an intelligent question. So silly questions, but, you know, always be brave enough to you're not going to be able to Google things about your career all the time. And when you do, you are going to see some scary answers like, you can't be a barrister unless you do a master's. I read that once. And I thought, well, I didn't do a master's. And so, you know, you can't always Google something. You can't always look it up in a book. You can't always ask your university tutor. Go straight to the profession. Oh, I must say, the number of emails that I've sent to QCs and junior barristers when I was at bar school saying, I'm really interested in your practice, commercial law. Would you mind if I spent 10 minutes speaking to you about your career? I mean, I shot those emails off. I probably sent about 35 to 40 emails. And I didn't feel embarrassed because I thought they were there once. They were once a student. And actually, I got a mentor out of it. I got a QC who was a mentor out of it, who's now head of chambers in London. And so you never know. Just ask the silly questions and you never know what comes out of it. It could be a networking opportunity.
And that's wonderful. Ma'am, I do want to ask you one thing that since law community is virtual based organization which helps law students in a lot of things. Ma'am, how do you think that law students can benefit from such virtual organizations according to you?
Well, I start by saying I'm really impressed by law community. I looked at your website and I thought, for me, it looks like a very nascent initiative. So something that's trying to do something different to, you know, and trying to encompass a lot of different sub-initiatives to help students. And I think what that achieves is a little bit more transparency between educators, students, and people in the profession. Where when it comes to something like law community, if you're thinking of ways and creative ways of trying to achieve that, you know, putting out articles as you do, podcasts, but getting students involved in that, magazines, a type of circular, which is a student-run initiative, getting people from the profession to talk about specific topics, talk about their careers, whether it be a 15-minute discussion on, you know, the difficulties of lawyer life. Just real questions like Lawyer 101. I think that's really important. I think students do benefit from it more than the initiatives realise. Because when I was saying earlier about asking the silly questions, not everybody is as brave to ask those silly questions. You know, and you've got to be, there's a balance to be drawn. And if you have an organisation like Law Community where you can go to and you can ask that question, or you can see what another student has asked, or you can see what another member of the profession has said, that having that at your fingertips, especially during a lockdown, is brilliant. And I think one thing that I noticed and I wanted to say is that law community could benefit from, I mean, you might already be working on this type of initiative, but benefit from a mentorship type of program where you have lawyers from India, you have lawyers from abroad joining the mentorship program as volunteers, and maybe you have students applying for it from India, and you get to match the mentor with the mentee. If there's a particular area of law they want to go into, or if you've got an in-house mentor and there's a mentee who wants to become an in-house lawyer, matching mentors and mentees and having a 1-hour session every 2 months with mentor and mentee. I mean, that might not be enough, but something like that I think would take law community to the next level, because you're already doing a lot of things which are so focused. I saw something that I really, really liked where you take a term or a particular concept and you describe it. And as I was going through that, I thought, I love this because even today, there are things as a lawyer where I see something, I think, oh, I've got to remind myself of this, and it's embarrassing because I should know this, but we're all humans. And if you can have, as a student, a pocket law community where you're not necessarily going there to look for a definition, but you're constantly, every day you wake up and you read this one thing. Oh, this is what this means. Keeps your mind. It's like mental maths, but for law. Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's great.
Ma'am, this experience as a host of mine, my experience is exemplary when I was talking to you.
Thank you.
I think everyone in the audience will love to witness this conversation that we had. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. Thank you so much.